guys, in this course you're going to learn the 6 principles of UX design, and you're also going to learn about the UX process as well. Now, this course is really good if you want to kickstart your UX career, if you're just starting off. And also, if you're a more mature, seasoned designer, it's always good to come back and just check the process, check the principles to make sure you're kind of all going in the right way. So once you've learned the 6 principles, you'll be able to kind of look at your own work and then say, right, I've applied it here, here, and here, or I'm missing this principle. This is perhaps why it's not working. And then you'll also be able to look at other designers' work and say, oh, look, they've applied principle number 1, 2, or whatever, and I like how they're doing that. Or maybe they're missing something. So if you're critiquing a junior designer's work, you can say, okay, right, you're missing principle number 1. You're not really designing for the user, you're doing it for yourself. And this is going to give you a structure to give you feedback. So we're going to go step by step through the 6 principles of UX design, and we're going to talk about the best practices of that, and I'm going to show you how to apply that principle to your own work. Now, once we've done those 6 principles, we'll then move on to the process of UX design. And this is an overview of the process, because obviously if you go deep into every single part of the process, that's going to turn into a lot more than just one course. Hey, I'm James Eccleston. I'm the founder of Bridge Studio, and I have 18 years of experience now. I started off my career designing record sleeves in Manchester, and also in the kind of dark old days, I've designed websites in Flash, and then we moved on to HTML. I then moved to London. I worked for some big brands like Virgin, and then after 8 years of living in London and working there, I moved to South America, and I worked for some fast-growing tech startups. And that's where I really got my teeth into UX design, and hopefully throughout this course I can bring out some of the insights I've learned over those 18 years and give them to you. Okay, so let's talk about the UX process. I'll walk you through the process I take when I've got enough time and resources. And I know that everybody will kind of have their own take on this, and there's lots of different kind of processes floating around the internet. So this is loosely based on design thinking as well. Another thing I want to stress is I won't be going too deep into every section. So there's a section on user testing. I won't go into too much detail on that, because that could be another class. And actually have done another class on that, but I'll just give you an overview of the whole process, so then you can go deeper on each section of that. Okay, so first up is to understand the challenge. This is probably the most important part, because there's no use going into a project and thinking you already have the answer. And also the client sometimes thinks like that as well. Sometimes the client will come to you and say, I want an app because... And then you're like, whoa, actually this sounds more like an editorial kind of website. Perhaps that's better. And maybe nobody will use that because it's not kind of sticky enough. People won't return to it. So you've got to come in with a kind of really open mind and delve deep and ask the client enough questions to understand kind of, right, what's the best way to resolve this problem? It is a website, is it a social media campaign, or is it an app? Then once you've done that, then you can start planning your projects and kind of start to think, right, how am I going to do my research? How much resources shall I dedicate to this project? So the next step 2 in our process is research. And this is going to help us gain empathy with our user and then see what's going on in the rest of the world, the rest of the market. So let's talk about some user interviews. Once you've found out what you spoke to the client and you found out, right, who the audience is, then you can start talking to them. So if we, let's say, talk to 5 people, then we can start generating kind of user personas. We can start making a list of challenges and problems they have. And obviously, each project you do, you're going to probably want to ask slightly different questions. But I have a few questions that kind of crop up most of the time when I'm doing projects. And the first one is, I always like to ask the user, what are you trying to achieve here? In this process, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? So let's take an example. Let's say a ride-hailing app. So I'll ask a question that will be, what are you trying to achieve here? And the first reply will be, I want a cab. I'll be like, okay. Now you go a bit deeper and you ask some more why questions. You say to them, why do you want a cab? And then you say, well, I want to use a cab or hail a cab because I want to pick my mother up at the airport. And then you can ask again, you can go even deeper. You can say, why do you want to pick your mother up at the airport? And then you can say, well, you know, she's traveling for the first time, she has mobility issues, anything like that. And then you're starting to discover kind of a lot of really interesting insights about the user. And then you could possibly help the user even more with these kind of deeper insights. So if it's something around mobility issues, perhaps you could build that into the app. Maybe the taxi, you should have an option to have a taxi that can take a wheelchair, perhaps. So again, going a bit deeper than I want a taxi, and you can go into I want a taxi for my mother who's 80 years old and needs a wheelchair. And then you tailor your design much more to your users. Another common question is, tell me a bit more about how you usually carry out this process. So you would say, okay, right, you have an app here. Tell me about what app you use and how you go about it. And then you can start to move on to other questions, such as, tell me about the problems you usually have or the kind of frictions you have when you usually use this app to hail a taxi. And then you can start writing all these down and say, right, these users have these problems. And then you can move on to other things like, what do you particularly enjoy about this? So you can have a kind of positive and negative kind of column of likes and dislikes there. Another question I like to ask is, what do you value in this process, or what's important to you? So for instance, let's say your user logs onto their bank on their desktop. You ask them, what do you value in this process? What's important here for you right now? And they might come back and say, well, I really value security, obviously. So again, that's I can write that down, create something. Or I value being able to see the latest transactions very quickly. Or I value being able to search the transactions I had a month ago. So then you can really find out what's important for your users. After that, you just want to get to know the user a little bit. So ask them a few personal questions about how old they are, what kind of job they have, any hobbies. And then maybe you can ask them some questions about what kind of brands do you like, what kind of clothing brands do you associate with, or what other apps or websites do you use that are similar. And this is just to kind of give us an idea of the kind of person that uses our services, and it helps us build like a mental picture in our head of who this is. One good thing to do once you've got enough data and enough information on your users is to build a user persona. And this isn't a real person, it's just a profile that's kind of made up from all your interviews, and it helps us empathize with our user. So we can then say, right, Johnny wants to use a ride-hailing app so his mother can come and visit him. So something like that. So rather than say user one, blah, 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 it's now Johnny, and we know who Johnny is in our head. One flaw with directly asking users questions is sometimes they will always tell you the truth, sneaky little users lying to you. But obviously if you ask them about their job, they might say that they're a better job than they actually are. They might not always give you the truth because they feel uncomfortable. So another good idea is to kind of go online, look at some forums where these users hang out, and look at the kind of things they're saying, look at the kind of problems they have, where they're not too embarrassed to admit it to somebody in person. And then you can gain some kind of deeper insights there. So once you've spoken to your users, now we can look at the market, and we can start to look at similar products. And one thing I like to do is I like to have a document where I have, right, these are all the really good things, the best practices, and we can maybe take some of these or do our own version of it. And then here are the opportunities or the things that other apps or websites are missing. And then that can help us build out a kind of functionality document. And it's also good to do some research into kind of the market, the styles, kind of colors, typography, and build up a kind of a reference document for when you're doing your visual designs. So there's lots of research you can do, but those are the kind of main ones I would do. You can go deeper into other types of questionnaires. You can take data online. You can see, right, how old are the users that use a ride-hailing app? When do they take it? So again, that might be quantitative data you can find online. But yeah, you can use a lot of different influencers in your research. I'm not going to go into all of them here because I'm just trying to give you an overview. Okay, so next up is step 3, which is ideation, idea making, the kind of fun part. So here we've got all our background, we know who our users are, know what the problems are, know what they're trying to achieve. We've spoken to our client, we know what the restrictions are on the project. And now it's just a case of sitting down and just scribbling away on paper, just getting loads and loads of our ideas down. One thing in this process I find really useful is to create ideas without judgment. So just kind of bang down ideas, bum, 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 bum. And then once you've kind of exhausted all the ideas, then just take all your scraps of paper, then start filtering. Because I find that if I'm trying to come up with ideas and I'm judging at the same time, I feel very limited. So it's best to create kind of without fear, and then just filter them later, because you might come up with some crazy idea that's actually really, really good, and you can always test that later. Okay, step 4, prototypes. So we've now chosen our favorite idea. If you've got enough resources, you can even choose 2. But let's say you've just chosen one idea and you're gonna make a prototype. And now a prototype is just a kind of a version of the product that has limited functionality that you can test. So you can use software such as Figma, Sketch, or XD to kind of mock something up to a kind of a sufficient level that it kind of looks real, and you can start testing that there, basically. So yeah, just a quick prototype. Okay, step 5. Oh, 5, 4. Okay, step 5, testing. Now this is another part I really, really like, because there's been so many times when I've designed an app or a website and I thought, this is amazing, I don't need to test this. And then you put it in front of a user and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't see that. And then the user's just like, well, how does this work? I don't understand. And you're like, that's really clear now. But when you're designing, you're so close to the design, you can't actually kind of see those errors. So when you're testing, it's a really good idea to write down 5 or 6 kind of main functionalities you want to test. And then you can create some kind of user stories. So when you're writing user stories, you want to give them a little bit of background to why they're carrying out a task. So let's see an example. We're going to use like a ride-hailing or ride-sharing app, let's say, as an example. So what you'd say is background. Your mother's arriving at the airport at 1 p.m. And then the task will be, send a taxi to the airport for 1 p.m. And then you can then watch your user go through the task. And it's really important you don't guide them here. You just observe them. And then you can see when there's a bit of friction or when they don't understand anything, you're going to ask them to speak out loud, say what they're thinking. But sometimes they just pause and there'll be a bit of silence. And then it's really important to see what the user does and not what they're saying. That's why a lot of the time we record it and we can go back and look at the notes and look at the videos and see, right, the user was having a problem there. Their thumb was hovering over that button and then they went to this one. And then you can use that to amend your work. Okay, so next up is making amends to your work. So you've done your user testing. You'll probably have a document of the kind of failed and passed tasks, and then you'll have loads of comments down the bottom saying, user 1 couldn't find the send button, or user 2 found the checkout cart, but it just took them a little bit too long. And you might even have some suggestions in there saying, move the button up, make it a different color, or something like that. So then you can start to kind of put all those changes into your product before it gets coded, because if you start to develop your product and it has these errors, and it's going to take a lot more time than you originally spent testing it, then to recode it and redo it. Or it could actually go out into the market with all these errors, and that could really hurt your brand as well. So again, a few minutes doing user testing or some guerrilla testing with some friends will save you a hell of a lot of time. So that was a quick overview of a user experience process. There's other processes there as well. There's a kind of design sprint, which is pretty different, where you can go through a process in 5 days and make a prototype very, very quickly. And then there's something known as kind of lean UX, where you basically kind of come up with an idea, make it, and then just test it. And you can test it out in the market. So some people have this idea of, right, I'm going to make an app and I can get out to the market and I can do some analytics and I can learn quicker than doing the research, doing the user testing and going through it that way. And it all depends on your clients, your preferences. I tend to mix kind of a few of these. So I've seen how useful it is to actually get something to market really, really quickly. And you look at the data coming back and saying, right, okay, this page isn't working. And you quickly do an iteration, get it up and see if that works or not. And sometimes that's a lot better than going through a long, kind of drawn out process. Another thing you can do is something called A/B testing. So when you have a product that's quite mature, you can start to do different versions of it. So let's say you have 2 versions of a checkout page, let's say one with a red button, one with a blue button, and then you send those 2 designs to 50% of clients or customers will have the red button, 50% will have the blue, and then you can see which one converts better. And the more testing you do, the more optimized your website will be. As well as that, I'd just like to add that when you do user testing, it doesn't have to be a long drawn out process. You can just do quick guerrilla testing with your friends, or take a prototype, go down to a cafe and just say, hey, can you just have a quick try of this app when I have a look over it? And those few minutes you spend testing something can really, really, really help you iron out the problems in your product very, very quickly. So last of all, I just want to kind of iterate the UX process. It's not set in concrete. You know, there's no such thing as one UX process. Everybody has their own way of doing it. Every company has their way of doing it, and there's no right way, basically. So if you work for a small, fast-moving startup, sometimes it's best to kind of get your ideas down, make it, and test it, and just go, 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 go. But if let's say you're working for a big multinational that has lots of resources, you can have teams working in parallel. So you can have a team dedicated to user testing, an analytics team, UX research team. So you can kind of all go forward together. Whereas if you're just a team of like 1 or 2 people, it would take you quite a long time to kind of go through those steps. So just adapt it and use common sense at the end of the day. Adapt it to your needs, and then you can change it, add your own ideas in there. But this is kind of the process I would take, and please feel free to take it and adjust it as you like. So that's quite a lot to take in. So I've produced this graphic to help you kind of keep that in your head, basically. So step 1 is to understand the problem. Then you research. So they research the users, the market, then you go on to creating ideas, create a prototype, and then you test it. And then once you've ironed out any other kind of problems, you can either do another round of ideation, you can prototype it, and then you can launch it. So that's the kind of basic UX process. But once you've launched, you don't want to kind of go through that all again. So when you've launched it, it would be more like this. It would be launch, and then you can analyze, kind of get some data on what you've got, and then iterate, and then go back to launch. And you just do this kind of quick cycle, going round and round, kind of optimizing your product. Principle number one is design for your users and not yourself. Now, this is a bit of a mind shift for some designers. I know when I was studying at university, I really wanted to create things for myself, and I always thought, oh, I really love this new style, I want to try this new aesthetic, and I really love this kind of style of design. So I would just produce work for myself, and it took me a long time once I got into the industry to kind of get my head around this and kind of detach myself from my own likes and start producing work that's tailored towards the needs of a user and not yourself. You need to put the user at the center of your design and design for their needs. Now, what we have to do, we have to get to know our user, to get to know what they're trying to achieve, what the problems are, where the friction areas are. So one of the best ways to do this is to do some interviews with them. Some of the questions we might ask our users are a bit of background, who they are, their age, a bit of their day-to-day life, and then we can go a little bit deeper and say, okay, what are your frustrations using this particular type of product? What are you trying to achieve? Why are you using this? We can ask them why a few times, maybe up to 5 times. And then what this does, this goes deeper and uncovers bigger truths around why they're trying to do something. One thing not to ask is, what do you want? It's your job to resolve their problems. So you've really got to understand what the problem is, and then it's your job to solve it. So this goes back to the Henry Ford quote of, if I asked them what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. When we start asking why a few times, a bit like a naive child, it uncovers some quite strange, bigger truths behind a problem. So here's some of the examples here. This year we were designing a money transfer app for Africa, and we decided to ask some of our users why 5 times. So the first question was, what are you trying to do? And they replied, transfer money. So then we asked, why do you want to transfer money? And they said, so my family in Ghana can have money. Then we asked, why do you want to send your family in Ghana money? And then they replied, so they can be independent. And then we asked, why do they want to be independent, or why do they want to spend money independently? And then they replied to buy a laptop for my little brother. And then we asked, why would you like to buy a laptop for him? And then they replied, so he can learn better at college, he can have influence from outside. And then we asked why again, and then they said, well, this is to improve his life. So we can see how he got quite deep quite quickly there. Now, we got quite deep there, and we uncovered some big problems that we probably can't resolve with a money transfer app, but we did find out some really interesting things. So we found that they wanted to buy a laptop, and maybe money transfer isn't the best way to do that. So we thought we could add a functionality where we can have a virtual card, and they can use that virtual card to buy goods. Another thing that we could also do is we could partner with a charity that helps with education in Africa. So we're not directly helping the end goal, the user, but we're supporting it in our way. Now we've got to know our user, we can do a little bit of other research as well to support us. We can ask them what kind of TV shows, what kind of websites they like, and then we can watch these and then gain an understanding a bit more about their culture. So once we've got all that information, we can create what's known as a user persona. This is a fictional character that we use to help us empathize with the user. Now, this is based on somebody who would typically use our product, and we talk about things like a bit about their background,
what their story is, their age, location, job. And then we go into things about the frustrations and problems, maybe some of the challenges in their life, and then problems around using the service we want to provide with them. Then we also speak about the objectives. So this is why they want to do this, why they want to use our products, and what they're trying to achieve. And then to give us an overall idea of their style, we can put some of the kind of brands they like. Last of all, we're going to give this persona a name. So let's call them Joel, and the type of user they are. So this is going to be the creative professional user. This is a really clean, nice designed user profile, but yours doesn't have to be as nice as this. You can do it quite quick and dirty and still get the same results. This is designed like this because sometimes we like to show it to clients or we need to sell in the process. When we're producing our designs, if we have a user persona, let's say he's called Joel, we can ask ourselves questions like, do you think Joel will understand the logging process? Or is this useful for Joel? And it just helps us empathize with our user. How is feedback shown? One way is very simple as like a haptic button. That's like a real button, so when you can feel it when you press it, and that means you know you've pressed the button. It's one problem touchscreens have. So when you touch a touchscreen, you don't always know whether that's working. You have to visually see whether you're touching a button. And the good thing about the classic button is you don't have to see the interface to know you've touched it. You can feel that. One area where haptic feedback or touch feedback is really useful is when you're driving. So imagine you're driving along and obviously you want to concentrate on the road, but you have to touch another button. Maybe it's the sound control, or it could be something for a map. You really don't want to be touching a touchscreen because you'll have no feedback whether you've actually touched the button or not. You'll have to physically look at the interface and see whether it's reacting or not. Whereas if it's a real button, you can kind of feel around while concentrating on the road. Now, when you're tapping a button, you should really change the color, or even on a website, when you roll over it, you should have a hover mode there. And that lets the user know that when the mouse is hovering over, that if you press something, that will do it. And when you press it, you should also have another color as well to let the user know that they've actually pressed it and they haven't clicked just off it. Another way to send feedback is to give the user a message. So some microcopy after sending a message, just something like your message has been sent, or you can add a little bit of personality to that as well if your brand is aligned that way. Once you've clicked on a page and it's loading, you can't load all the information or the content right at the same time. So you might have to display some kind of preloaders or what the content might look like. And this will just give the user feedback to let them know that content will be loaded here, don't worry, it's coming soon. Another way to give feedback is sound. So on the Mac, when you delete your bin, you'll hear a paper scrunching noise, and that lets the user know that that file has been deleted. Feedback in UX design is really important. It lets the user know what's going on and stops them from getting frustrated. Just imagine if you're tapping a button like this and it's like, has that message sent? I don't know, the button hasn't changed color. I haven't got a sent message, what is going on? And you could have just sent that message 20 times to your boss. The next principle is digestibility. Now, your brain shouldn't have to expend a load of energy to kind of figure out what it's looking at, because most people can only remember right about 7 things in their working memory, plus or minus 2. So mine's probably 2, because I can never remember anything that I'm looking at. Don't make them sit there all day trying to figure out what's on the page. There's nothing worse than coming to a web page or an app that has a wall of text. You're just not going to read it. So if you do need to have a lot of text on a page, you can break this up with subheaders or icons. You really do need a good hierarchy in the design here. If you have a really long form, what you might want to do is to break it up into a number of steps. So when the user comes to it, it's broken down into little chunk sizes that's easier to digest. So just imagine seeing a massive barbecue, thinking, oh, I've got to eat all of that. Okay, that's great. But it's a lot easier to eat that if it's broken down into little parts. A good design should be scannable. You should be able to see what the page is about, what you have to do just from glancing at it. And if you ever watch the users go through websites, they won't spend very long on there. Sometimes they can spend as little as a couple of seconds, and the speed they scroll is incredible. So they just look down, look at the information they want to read, and that's it. If a user does come to a page with lots of information on, the likelihood is they'll bounce straight off. Now let's have a look at an example here. So this is a website for a box that you can rent that gives you Wi-Fi while you're traveling into different countries here. So the process is actually quite long to rent this out, and you can see when you come to the form there's a lot to look at here, and there's a danger that the user will get here and think, well, that's a lot to fill out, I haven't got time now, maybe I'll come back to it, and they'll never come back to it, or they go to a competitor. So one thing we can do here is break this down into different steps. Here's one example of how we can do it. So we start off by putting numbers on here so we know it's steps, and we can break it down into the different sections. So already this feels more digestible. Alternatively, we can just show the user what they need to know at a specific time and break it down to these steps, and then scroll the screen when they're ready to see the next part. Therefore, we break it down into bite-sized chunks. So let's start by filling in a date. That automatically opens, makes it quicker. Okay, next step. Okay, tell us where you'd like to pick up and drop off the device. Same pick up and drop off point, and I want to go to the shop. Okay, that will be in Madrid. Next step, and then we scroll down here and we fill in our details, and that's it. So it doesn't feel like such a big form now. Some other things that could improve the design, we could put a progress bar at the top and show the user how many steps there are at each point. So when they're filling the form out, they know how much more they got to fill out. Another good example of breaking information down into small sizes is the InVision website. So they start off with a clear hierarchy of their main title, their H1 here up really large, and then a bit of introductory text, a button or call to action, some of the partners they're working with, and then they have a illustration, another title here, and you notice there's no more than like 3 or 4 lines in the entire page here. And then the pace changes a little bit, so we've got a dark background, these brilliant big attention grabbing headlines, some facts, some numbers here. As we scroll down we have some more information here, and then the background image changes. So it constantly keeps us interested, and there's never too much information to digest at any one time here. So you can flip down the page, you can scan through it and get the information that you need. There will be times when you want to use longer text, like in a Medium article. This is one we wrote last year about how walking can improve your creativity. So obviously you don't want to break the text up too much because it's an article, but you do want to have a hierarchy. So we'll have our main headline, the video that helps explain the article, and then we'll have these subtitles. We'll break it down into short paragraphs, and then we can punctuate the design with these pull quotes, a list, other subtitles, slightly smaller subtitles, different size images, more videos, pull quotes, and then this helps us stay interested while we're reading the article and it doesn't get too monotonous. Or if you're not sure if you want to read the entire article, you can just read the headline and scan down some of the subtitles so we can read, is your brain stuck? Okay, that sounds interesting, so I'm going to read this, and then maybe I want to skip down, I can see all these tips for creative power walk. Okay, that looks interesting.
And then maybe we'll read how walking helps creativity. So, okay, maybe we're not interested in that. And then we can skip down to another headline here and decide what to read.
Next up is clarity. Now, when you come to a web page, it should be clear exactly what you're supposed to do and what happens when a particular action is taken. So, for example, one thing that really frustrates me is when I sign up for a free trial, but I still have to give my credit card details. So this feels a little bit dishonest, and it feels like they're going to trick me or start taking money from my credit card without letting me know. And it's pretty obvious that the idea is to get you to sign up, but if they're not completely open about this, a lot of users just won't sign up. So one tip would be to say, we'll never take money from your credit card without letting you know, or we'll send you an email 10 days before we'll charge you and you can opt out at any time. So this just makes the user feel a lot more comfortable and there's no tricks involved here. Also, make sure your site uses clear language. So one example was a few years ago, Facebook had a pop-up that said cancel upload, and then you had two buttons, one said confirm and one said cancel. So it was like, am I cancelling the cancel or am I confirming the cancel? So that got a little bit confusing. So make it clear what you want the user to do and what will happen after they've carried out a particular action. Landing pages are a really good example of clarity. They normally have one purpose, and that purpose is usually something like sign up or buy this particular project, and they don't really want to do anything else apart from that one action. So in this example here, this looks really clear. We have our main title, get our ebook to learn how to be a good leader, and then you have a picture of the ebook on the left. We have our email and download your free guide. So it's pretty clear what we need to do here. Underneath that, we have what you will learn. So if you need more information, so you might not trust them right at the beginning, but you might need to delve deeper to be reassured. The only thing I think can be improved on this website here is the text underneath the call to action, underneath the button here. It says, by clicking, you consent to receive culture and engagement communications from our Office Vibe. Now, when you're filling the email and you click it, you might not see this text. And it's also below the call to action. So the normal way you'd fill this out is type in your email, click the button, and then I've just signed up for something I didn't really want. And there's no opt-out. So here we see an example of how sometimes the business can conflict a little bit with the interests of the user. Our next principle is familiarity. Now, when we're designing things, designers love to create new things and be innovative, but when you see something new for the first time, it takes a little while to understand what it is you're looking at here. So something like a button on a website, you don't really need to reinvent it. A lot of the time you'll see things on Dribbble with these crazy animations and they look beautiful, but they don't really get the job done any better than a normal button is. And also, so when we're going through a website or an app or an interface, it'll just tire us out if we just have to keep on deciding what is this new thing here, what is that? Is that a form or is this kind of some new crazy animation? There's things like material design that's been designed for a reason. So this is to standardize all of Google's interfaces. So you don't take any more kind of brain power up when you're going through their interfaces. These are like conventions. So just as when you're driving, a green light means go, on a website, a hamburger, kind of the three stripes will mean this is a menu, and people have learnt these, so there's no need to reinvent the wheel here. This also makes it easier as a designer as well. So when you're building an app or a website, you have a kit and you can just apply that kit to your design and you can concentrate on the really important things, which is the functionality. So it's better to be good than original. Somebody said on the internet, don't know who, but sounds great, doesn't it?
So let's take a look at this Australian magazine here. Now when we come here, this all looks pretty easy to understand, pretty clear. I know that this is a menu here, even though hamburger menus, they've caused a bit of controversy in UX design. Some say that you don't need to hide all that information away, and some say it cleans it up very nicely. Some people say they don't understand what it is, but I think people have had time to understand that this is a menu now. So you can see how changing something into something as simple as a hamburger menu can cause controversy. So if I click on here, I'm going to see the menu. Okay, great. Yeah, I knew that would happen. And then X, that obviously means to close. Magnifying glass, that's obviously search, so I can search here. And then a next arrow here, I'm guessing that's going to scroll the image along. Yeah, so everything's really clear and easy to understand here. And we're sticking to conventions, even though this is a really beautiful website, quite creative, it's still sticking to the conventions we know. When that rolls over, okay, that lets us know that's clickable. And we can scroll down to the bottom here, there's a form. So here's the form. It looks a little bit different from a normal form, so maybe that would just take me a couple of milliseconds more to understand that this is a form what I've got here. That might not sound like much, but when you've been browsing the web all day, or if you really want something to happen quickly, these little kind of differences in forms can make a difference. So, and then the text is aligned in the center, which is a bit different. So that's an extra load on my brain. Like, again, milliseconds here. So let's fill in my name. Okay, that's nice. There's an autofill there. And now I'm scanning around for the button. So the subscribe button hasn't got an outline like the ones at the top. So that gets a tiny bit lost there. Again, nothing too bad there. But you can see when you start breaking the conventions, it just takes the user a little bit longer to figure out what's going on. So we're going to have a little look at some animations and designs on Dribbble. And I don't want to criticize the designers. I think their design is fantastic. They're really slick and a lot of time and effort has gone into these. But perhaps from a usability point of view, perhaps they're not quite the right thing to do. So looking at this one here, when you press the button to go to another screen, it does take like a fraction of a second too long, and you're bombarded with a lot going on. So imagine going through this app and using this app for a long time, and every time you click a button you have all these animations going on. That's going to get really frustrating and tiring to use. This is another example of a really slick animation here, and I love the way it all comes together. This is really cool, so there's a lot of effort that's gone into this. But again, so just imagine that every time you click on a button, it just takes a second for it to load, and a second doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're using an app, it really is. And it's going to get very frustrating to the user. So if they click on a button, it just takes a couple of seconds for these animations to load, and they don't really add much to the usability of the app apart from making it just look really cool. So there's always a balance to be made between adding that little bit of extra personality to a design and then going totally overblown and annoying the user. And this tiny button animation is a nice example of something that's functional. It tells the user that the system's thinking, it's waiting, and then it also gives you feedback and lets you know when the job has been done and it's activated. So it's not overbearing, and it's not kind of trying too hard, and it's very functional and quite beautiful too.
Our last principle is delight. Groove really is in the heart. Okay, so there's a reason why I'm a designer, not a comedian, and you probably didn't even get that reference. So when we're talking about delight, we're talking about the icing on the cake. And you really don't want your cake to be all icing unless you're me when you're 5 years old. So let's talk about the icing on our interfaces. Now these can be things that just make us think, wow, they've gone the extra mile. Look at the detail they put into this interface. Or, whoa, that's just a tiny bit different. And it just sticks in your head and it makes the whole experience really, really pleasurable to use. Now, making something pleasurable to use can just be, it's just really simple and straightforward and really intuitive. Or we can add some more quirky personality, and we can bring this in a few different ways. So we can bring this in a small bit of animation that just does something a tiny bit different. Or another way would be introducing a bit of microcopy that just is a little bit humorous and just makes us smile. Another way could be using some really nice illustration there. Something that's a little bit different to what's going on at the moment and just makes us think, wow, this site is really, really different. So when adding delight to your design, it should never get in the way of your design. And one thing I heard was it's a bit like adding lipstick. So you would never add lipstick all over your face, you just add a tiny bit. That's what I would do anyway, if I wore lipstick. So we're just about done. Now let's recap some of the things we just learned. So the first thing, and probably the most important, is that you should be designing for your users and not yourself. It's a little bit of a kind of mind shift for younger designers, because younger designers always want to do something themselves when it's cool, but you really have to investigate your users' needs and likes before you start designing. Now the second one is feedback. So what does this mean? So feedback means is your interface is going to react, give you feedback whenever you interact with it. So if you press a button, the button changes color, or maybe it could be audio feedback, or maybe it's just a bit of copy or message. Now the third one is digestibility. So think of this as if you come to an interface, there's not too much and it doesn't overwhelm you with choices. So there's a clear hierarchy and you know what you should be doing. And that kind of leads on to clarity. So clarity is knowing exactly what you have to do with an interface. What's the primary goal of the interface? And then the fifth is familiarity. So again, so the buttons should look like buttons, forms should look like forms, and menus should look like menus. There's no point trying to reinvent the wheel here, and we've got standards for a reason. You can still be creative with that, but please keep in mind that you don't want the user to be thinking, what is that? Is that a button? Because they just get bored with interface. Now the last part is delight. So this is just adding a little extra touch, a little bit of magic that makes the user smile and go the extra mile. So this could be a tiny bit of humor, or it could be just something as simple as the interface, the app, the website just works seamlessly. It's so perfect, it's so simple to use, and therefore it's a joy to use all the time. Or it could be a little bit of humor when you send a message. I know MailChimp do a very good job of this, and it can just be really nice illustration. So these 6 foundations of UX will help you guide you through your work. Whether you're new to the industry or you're a seasoned pro, it's always good to come back and just reassess your work a little bit. So I really hope these will help you a lot in your work and help you to develop it and help you to grow. So that's the end of the course, and all that's left to do is to upload your project. And your project will be, it's really simple, just upload some of your work and then talk about how you've applied one or more of the principles of UX to the design. And you might want to talk a little bit about how this helps the end user and the overall goal of your work. And also, please let me know if you want feedback. I'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. There's also a PDF summary included, as well as an ebook that covers the course and goes into a bit more depth around each topic.
Okay, so we're going to look at a case study here, and we're going to look through our principles of user experience, and we're going to see how they've applied them. So we're going to look at the MailChimp website, and they rebranded not too long ago, and they've kind of changed their image a little bit. So let's go back to our principles. So we'll go through the site one by one, and let's start with design for your user and not yourself. So here, let's see, we've got this bright yellow background. The main headline is all of your marketing tools in one place. So I guess they're talking to marketing people. Grow your audience, create campaigns, and build your brand with MailChimp's all-in-one marketing platform. So they've done research into who they're talking to, and I guess they're speaking to people who do marketing. I know they speak to a lot of other people, but this is what I can see straight off. Then we can have what you can do with MailChimp. So we have all our features here. Put your audience first, bring your brand to life. Okay, we talk about branding here. Create integrated campaigns, turn data into insights. Okay, and then let's go down a marketing platform for your business. Okay, so we're talking to people, again, marketers and maybe business owners as well. They say your business, so that sounds like it could be a small business. And then we have e-commerce, mobile web apps, startups. So maybe some of their audiences are startups here. Then we scroll further down and we have a quote from one of the users here. So we have a photo, and then she says, with MailChimp's help, we've scaled our business nationally with 1 million members and counting. And that's the owner of Urban Sitter. So they've gone in and done research to find out who their user is, and they've taken quotes from them, so that'll help build confidence. Scroll down a bit more. MailChimp's new features. Okay, this looks a bit like a blog. You'll be in good company. So these are other companies that use them. Again, another really good example of they know exactly who their users are. And right at the bottom, a call to action, and they can pick a plan. So that looks like it's really aimed at small companies, startups perhaps. We've got the co-founder here, so they're working directly with them. So it looks like, from my point of view, it's smaller companies here, new companies, but I do know of big multinationals that use MailChimp as well. But from this webpage, that's the impression I get. So let's go to the next one, feedback. Let's see where this website uses feedback. So that's quite nice. So if I roll over the navigation here, it turns white. And these buttons as well, they change color, so that lets me know it's clickable. The line appears here, and this is quite nice here as well. So this expands. Font changes color, and it also goes into bold. And let's see what happens when I search. So email, click. Now it's doing something, that's come up with some results. Okay, and it's also highlighted the word email. So it's going to show me what I'm looking for, and it's going to highlight in the header and also the body text, which is really useful. So that's a good example of feedback there. And they've also left my search query at the top, so if I need to search again, it's going to be really, really easy. Okay, let's go back to the home page. Ah, that's nice. See, a little monkey. Okay, we'll come on to that in the last topic. Let's go down. Okay, so there's a rollover there as well. Okay, so that's interesting. So when I roll over a blog article here, the rest kind of fade out. So it lets me know that it's chosen. Usually what they do, they kind of highlight the one you're rolling over. So this kind of feedback personally, it distracts me a little bit, because when I roll over, my eyes are on where I want to click, and I can see it out of my field of vision that there's something else happening, which is a little bit strange. So Personally, I would prefer to highlight when I'm rolling over rather than fade back when I'm not, because it feels a bit distracting there. But at least I know that something's happening. Let's go down. Okay, that's clickable. Okay, there's not too much more to feedback on here. It's really just some nice rollover states and the search here. I think these rollovers could be improved. Okay, really quick. Now let's look at digestibility. So we get here and we have a headline, a bit of explanation, a call to action, secondary call to action, which is not a button, it just looks like a text link. So it's we can see there's a clear hierarchy. They want you to click on pick a plan, and then a nice illustration here. So this looks like it's really easy to understand. There's not much there, and if you do want to learn more, it's here. It's not all explained all at once. So again, very short headline here. Your business is growing. Now what? And then an explanation. We go down and we've got these nice chunks here. We've got this animated GIF that helps us explain. Again, it goes off into other segments to explain more details. There's a nice bit of feedback here. This animation. There's another call to action. Then this is really nicely broken down. You see, there's nothing more than one paragraph on the page. And then there's a video, so it's changing the pace, something different. Okay, so this all seems really nicely broken up. And then they change rhythm right at the bottom. So I have all this white, and then right at the bottom they change to yellow, just to say that this is a different part of the page. And again, they could come back to one of their main messages and sign up. Let's see if there's any other parts on here that have longer text. So I imagine our story in our company, that might have a bit more text because they have to explain more. Right, that's simple. Our story, header in blue, they've changed the section, this was different. And and so here we have a couple of paragraphs. And we've got this nice editorial touch with the drop cap and the M. Big headline, 2 paragraphs, image, 4 paragraphs, title, image. So even though this is a longer kind of article, it's really nice to read because everything's broken up to nice short paragraphs, nice bite-size chunks here. So this feels really, really good. There's nothing that feels indigestible on this web page. It all feels like it's a nice size. I want to read it. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Let's see. Okay, digestibility and then clarity. Okay, so we get here, and is it clear what we have to do or what the site's all about? So the name's called MailChimp, so obviously that has something to do with email. And then we have a nice headline here, so it's pretty clear. All of your marketing tools in one place. Grow your audience, create campaigns, build your brand with MailChimp's all-in-one marketing platform. So I guess it's a marketing platform. I've always known MailChimp just sending out emails to lists of people. How obvious is that if you've never heard of MailChimp? So okay, so then they make it a bit clearer. So they've started off with the kind of global benefits of what they want. They have this image here of people, so I guess they're a people-friendly company, and then they go directly into what you can do, all the benefits. Here, these kind of broken down things, items. Then we explain a bit more for what kind of business you're on. Okay, so this feels kind of pretty clear. At the top we've got why MailChimp, marketing platform, overview. Okay, it feels pretty straightforward. So if I'd never ever heard of MailChimp before, I think I'd guess what this is about pretty easily, and then I know I can either sign up here, log in if I'm a current user, search something, pick a plan. But pick a plan is clearly what they want you to do. And it's nice how they've highlighted this is their most recommended pricing plan here. So you can see premium, standard, essential, free. So that starts off the most expensive. So I think why they've done that is this makes the recommended, the standard one, look really, really cheap next to the premium one. So if you read the really expensive one first, everything off that is going to feel really cheap. And obviously free is the last one you get to. So they obviously want to push the paid ones. Is it clear what you get? So you get an introduction, and we have our features, this table. This all looks really clear. Okay. There's quite a lot on this table. And they have broken up and down to chunks, which makes it a little bit noisy. And then this is nice, so when you get back, you'd have to scroll all the way up to the top. You've got the pricing in here, so that feels good. So that feels pretty clear. And then to make it even clearer, you've got frequently asked questions at the bottom. So that feels really good. Okay, next. So familiarity. Oh God, I can't even say that word. Let's go back home. Yeah, so this is a button. This looks like a button. This looks like a link. This is a drop down because it has an arrow on it. Search. That's obviously it's got a loop or a magnifying glass. Everything. It's pretty standard stuff. You know, it's a really nice website. It's brought to life with the illustrations, but everything is like pretty familiar here. So if you've ever used the internet before, I think you know how to use this website. So let's look at sign up for free. So we go in, put email address in, username, password. Yeah, I need a few more things in the password. Get started. Okay, that's a really standard form, really easy. There's not too much there. One thing I've noticed here, they've taken out the logo or any other navigation to keep you focused on here. They don't want you going back, so which I want to do. So I want to go back, get out of this cave. Okay, now then. So last one, delight. So this is just the icing on the cake. What special things have they done? So I rolled over the logo, and that's a lovely little interaction there. Dead simple. So the monkey just nods and then winks. So that's gonna hopefully bring a little smile to your face, and it's not getting in the way of anything. It's not distracting. Other ways this brings delight. It's beautifully simple. So doesn't look like too much. The illustrations feel really nice, really hand-drawn, really organic, really human. So this doesn't look like a stock illustration at all. So this looks, I think they've definitely had this commissioned just for them. And again, these illustrations are beautiful, really nice, quite quirky, very people-orientated. The font feels very different. That feels very human, very nice, rounded serifs with lots of bracketing. It feels really natural. So let's scroll down. So we've got somebody there. These illustrations feel great. Yeah, I think this feels like they've gone the extra mile. There's all the details in there, like tiny things like when you scroll down, the logo stays but the navigation goes, but then when you scroll back up, it comes on again. Scroll down, up. So those interactions are really nicely thought through, and it's a fade, so it doesn't just cut out as a fade. So let's put my mouse up, and when the mouse hovers over, yeah, it's there as well. And roll over, and that fades in and out as well. So that's not just a cut, that's not just going straight to darker green, that's a fade. What else can we see on here? Okay, so these illustrations change. Yeah. So this has a nice amount of delight in there, so it feels like it's not just a template, there's a bit of love and care gone into that. So hopefully this will be a really good example for you guys to see, and then maybe you can use some of these techniques in your own work. So whether that be having some custom illustration there, writing some really concise copy there. Oh, there's another nice little thing they do, the roller, so when you highlight text that goes into pink rather than just a generic blue. Really straightforward, it's broken down to nice little chunks, nothing's too different or crazy. You know that's a button, you know that's a drop down, but they still manage to put personality in there. So next job is how can you bring these things into your work? Okay, great, thanks a lot.